Dear students, in our previous lecture, we have discussed the objectives and principles of the United Nations. Now, in our coming lectures, we are going to discuss organizational structure of the United Nations. In today's lecture, we will discuss UN General Assembly's structure, powers, and functions. A well-defined structure is crucial for the success of any organization, and this is especially true for a complex organization like UN. It is this organizational structure which tells us that which structure is responsible for what. It also helps an organization like UN to function efficiently and achieve its goals effectively. Thus, without a well-defined organizational structure, it is not possible to achieve the set objectives for the UN. Now let's have a look at the organizational structure of the UN very briefly. According to the UN Charter, United Nations has 6 organs. General Assembly, it is like legislative organ of the UN. Security Council, it is like executive organ of the UN. Economic and Social Council, as you know, the aim of UN is not only to prevent war and maintain peace, but also to look to the social and economic welfare of the member states. This function is performed by Economic and Social Council. Another important organ of UN is Trusteeship Council. It is like the Mandate Commission of the League of Nations. Its task was to look after the administration of territories placed under the UN supervision. The Trusteeship Council suspended its operations in 1994 upon the independence of Palau, the last remaining UN trustee territory. Another organ of UN is International Court of Justice. The International Court of Justice is the main judicial body of the United Nations. The last organ of UN is Secretariat. The Secretariat is the main administrative body of the UN which works under the supervision of the Secretary General. Apart from these 6 main organs, UN has some specialized agencies. As you know, that the UN Charter says that each main organ of UN can establish various specialized agencies to fulfill its duties. Some of the important UN specialized agencies are, like you can have a look at this slide. It is like International Labour Organization, UNESCO, WHO, World Bank. The United Nations performs most of its humanitarian work through these agencies. The UN has also established various commissions, various committees, councils, funds, and programs like International Law Commission, UN Commission of Disarmament, UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Human Rights Council, United Nations Children's Emergency Fund. Now we are going to discuss structure of the UN General Assembly. It is Article 7 of the UN Charter which establishes General Assembly as one of the 6 principal organs of the United Nations. It is the most popular and largest body of the UN. It is known as World Parliament, World Legislature. Historically, it is the successor to the Assembly of the League of Nations. Like League Assembly, all members of the UN are the members of the General Assembly. Thus, General Assembly is unique in its inclusivity, providing every member state, regardless of its size, power, and equal platform to voice concerns and opinions on global issues. This organ plays a key role in setting international norms and standards by adopting resolutions on a variety of issues like peace, security, development, human rights, and international law. Thus, United Nations General Assembly plays an important role in promoting international cooperation, facilitating dialogue among member states, and addressing a diverse range of global challenges. As you know, the devastating impact of World War II led to an unprecedented human suffering, loss of life, and widespread destruction. The war highlighted the urgent need for an effective international organization that could promote peace and prevent conflict among nations. That the League of Nations, established after World War I, failed to prevent the outbreak of Second World War. Its weakness, such as lack of enforcement mechanisms and the absence of major global powers, underscore the need for a more robust and inclusive international organization. In simple words, we can say that the establishment of the United Nations General Assembly was a response to the global challenges of its time with a vision to create a more just and cooperative international order that could promote peace, development, and human rights. The context of post-war devastation and the failure of earlier international efforts shaped the creation and objectives of the UN General Assembly within the broader framework of the United Nations. Thus, General Assembly was conceived as a forum where all member states, regardless of size, power, would have an equal voice. Each member state would have one vote, reflecting the principle of sovereign equality. Now, first we will look at the membership of the UN General Assembly. Means, who can be the member of UN General Assembly? According to UN Charter, only that entity can be member of UN General Assembly which fulfills two conditions. First condition is that an entity should be a sovereign state. And second condition is it should have peaceful intentions. Therefore, we can say that to be an eligible for membership in the UN General Assembly, an entity must be a sovereign state. This means that entity should be a state in political sense, which means that it should have a defined territory, a permanent population, a government, and the sovereignty, which means capacity to enter into relations with other states. Second condition is peaceful intentions. Member states are required to demonstrate their commitment to the principles of the UN Charter, including the peaceful resolution of disputes and refraining from the threat or use of force against territorial integrity or political independence of any state. The second condition is that state should be a peace-loving state. Then he can be the member of UN General Assembly. Dear students, presently there are 193 members in the General Assembly, which shows that the General Assembly's membership is universal, encompassing a diverse range of countries, each with an equal vote regardless of its size, regardless of its influence. This inclusivity of the General Assembly makes it a broad-based representative body within the UN system, fostering dialogue and cooperation on global issues. As I told you that UN General Assembly is a principal organ of UN and it operates under a set of rules outlined in its charter. The composition, the structure of UN General Assembly has been explained in the Article 9 and Article 22 of the UN Charter. According to Article 9, the UN General Assembly is consisted of all the members of the UN, and all the members have a right to send the maximum 5 representatives to the UN General Assembly. Article 22 of the UN Charter authorizes the UN General Assembly to establish its subsidiary organs to perform its functions. At present, it has total 54 subsidiary organs, including boards, commissions, committees, councils, and working groups. These subsidiary organs make their recommendations in the form of draft resolutions and decisions to the meeting of the Assembly for its consideration. The UN General Assembly has 6 main committees in which every member state has a right to send its one representative. The first committee is Disarmament and International Security Committee. This committee deals with disarmament and issues which are related to the international security matters. So, Disarmament and International Security Committee looks at the key issues like nuclear weapons, conventional weapons, disarmament treaties, and arms control. Second committee is Economic and Financial Committee. This committee focuses on economic and financial matters, sustainable development, and development-related issues. So its key issues are poverty eradication, global economic governance, trade, and sustainable development goals. Another main committee of UN General Assembly is Social, Humanitarian, and Cultural Committee. This committee addresses social, humanitarian, and human rights issues. So, key issues of this committee are human rights, refugees, indigenous people, social development, and advancement of women. The next main committee is Spatial, Political, and Decolonization Committee. It handles a variety of political subjects not covered by the Security Council and oversees decolonization issues. So its main issues are peacekeeping operations and decolonization processes. The next committee is Administrative and Budgetary Committee. This committee examines the UN budget and administrative issues. Therefore, the key issues of this committee are budgetary matters, financial management, and administrative functions. The last main committee of UN General Assembly is Legal Committee. This committee looks after legal questions and deals with the codification of international law. Therefore, key issues of this committee are international law, legal aspects of peacekeeping, and international dispute resolution. These main committees play a crucial role in discussing various issues before presenting them to the General Assembly for consideration. Besides these 6 main committees, there are other committees as well like the Credentials Committee, the General Committee. There are boards like Board of Auditors, Trade and Development Board. There are councils like Human Rights Council, Council of the United Nations University. The UN General Assembly performs its functions with the assistance and support of these subsidiary organs. The structure of UN General Assembly also includes Office of the Presiding Officer. The General Assembly elects its own president for 1 year and is chosen from the representatives of member states. Traditionally, the presidency of UN General Assembly follows a regional rotation system. Different regions take turns holding position, ensuring equitable representation from various parts of the world. The president is elected through majority vote, which means that the candidate who receives the majority of votes is appointed as the president of UN General Assembly. Generally, the president is taken from the small nation. Like the first president of General Assembly was Mr. Paul Hennin from Belgium, and the present president, Denis Francis, who is from a country about which very few people know. The name of the country is Trinidad. Now we are going to see how decisions are made in UN General Assembly. The UN General Assembly takes decisions through a process of consensus, where member states reach an agreement without the need for a formal vote. This is the preferred approach to decision making within UN General Assembly. However, if consensus cannot be reached, then decisions are taken by voting. Now we are going to discuss what is the procedure and what is the process of this voting. There are certain matters which require simple majority. As you know that in the General Assembly, each member state has one vote, and a simple majority means that more yes votes than no votes are required for a decision to be adopted in case of simple majority. Some decisions, however, especially those who are of significant importance, require a higher threshold of support. A two-thirds majority vote may be necessary for issues such as amendments to the UN Charter, admission of new members, or budgetary matters and matters related to international peace and security. In most cases, voting in the UN General Assembly is done through an open ballot. Each member state casts its vote publicly, and the results are recorded. In other words, voting in UN General Assembly is done by showing hands or by standing. In voting, there are three choices. Either the member can say yes or no or abstain. So there is no voting by proxy. But in some instances, particularly when sensitive matters or elections are involved, a secret ballot may be used. This allows member states to vote confidentially. However, there are certain issues, there are certain matters which are referred to committee for consideration. So, many issues are first considered in the UN General Assembly's main committees before being presented to the session for a decision. This review committee discusses and sometimes modify proposals before forwarding them to the UN General Assembly. The recommendations and reports from the main committee often carry significant weight in the decision-making process, providing a more in-depth examination of specific issues. Many decisions in the UN General Assembly are also made through resolutions, and the adoption of a resolution requires the agreed upon number of votes. Thus, we can say that the decision-making process in the UN General Assembly reflects the democratic principles of the United Nations, where all member states have an equal voice. The emphasis on consensus underscores the importance of dialogue and cooperation among nations. But when necessary, voting procedures provide a structural means for decision making. Let us see the powers and functions of the UN General Assembly. The powers and functions of the UN General Assembly have been described in detail in the UN Charter from Article 10 to 17. Some of the powers and functions of the UN General Assembly have been mentioned in the other parts of the UN Charter. Now we are going to discuss these functions of UN General Assembly in detail. The first function is deliberative functions. As you know, General Assembly is essentially a deliberative body, which means that it can discuss any question, any matter within the scope of the UN Charter. The UN General Assembly serves as a forum for member states to engage in open and inclusive debates on international issues. It facilitates the exchange of ideas and perspectives of member states. Article 11 says that General Assembly may call the attention of the Security Council to situations which are likely to endanger international peace and security. As you know, General Assembly has deliberated, General Assembly has discussed many questions like Palestine question, racism in Africa, and presently Ukraine crisis. Thus, being a deliberative organ of the UN system, during the General Assembly sessions, member states discuss global challenges and issues such as climate change, poverty eradication, and peacekeeping operations, which sometimes led to the adoption of resolutions that guide international policies. The next function of General Assembly is supervisory function. The supervisory role of General Assembly in relation to other organs of the UN is also specified in the UN Charter. As an apex body, it receives and considers reports from Security Council. It also supervises the work of Trusteeship Council as provided under Article 16. The Economic and Social Council has to take the approval of General Assembly for calling international conferences. The General Assembly also makes rules for the appointment of the staff in the Secretariat. The UN General Assembly also reviews reports submitted by the UN Secretary General. It also coordinates the policies and activities of the specialized agencies like WHO, International Labour Organization, IMF. Next function is financial functions. The General Assembly also exercises financial powers. The UN General Assembly has the authority to approve the UN budget. According to Article 17, General Assembly has the power to consider and approve the budget of UN. It also ensures that the organization's financial resources are allocated according to member states' decisions. Next function is electoral functions. The General Assembly occupies a central position insofar as its elective functions are concerned. It admits new states on the recommendation of the Security Council. It also elects non-permanent members to the Security Council. 18 members of the Economic and Social Council are elected by the General Assembly. It also elects judges of the International Court of Justice. The Assembly also appoints the Secretary General of the UN, but on the recommendation of the Security. Another important function of UN General Assembly is constituent functions. Article 108 and 109 lays down provisions in relation to the constituent functions of the General Assembly. Under Article 108, amendment to the UN Charter may be valid only when it has been adopted by a two-thirds vote of the members of the General Assembly and ratified by all the permanent members of the Security Council. According to the Article 109 of the Charter, the Assembly can call General Conference for the review of the Charter, and the date and place of conference may be fixed by the two-thirds votes of the members of the General Assembly. In addition to these main functions, the UN General Assembly also performs certain other functions, like peacekeeping operations. The UN General Assembly can authorize the establishment of peacekeeping missions to address conflicts to establish peace in the troubled region. For example, UN General Assembly approves peacekeeping missions in Kosovo, in South Sudan, but on the basis of the Security Council recommendations. Similarly, UN General Assembly can prepare Universal Periodic Review on the Human Rights. Universal Periodic Review on Human Rights is a process where the human rights records of all UN member states are periodically reviewed. Member states participate in this mechanism, present their human rights achievements and challenges, engage in a dialogue with other states, and receive recommendations for the improvement of human rights in their states. Another function is establishment of specialized agencies and programs. The UN General Assembly can establish specialized agencies and programs to address specific global issues, coordinate international efforts. For example, the creation of agencies like UNESCO, the UN Development Programme, demonstrate the UN General Assembly's role in addressing diverse global challenges. Declaration of International Days. The UN General Assembly can also declare international days to raise awareness and promote global action on specific issues. For example, declaration of International Women's Day, World Environment Day, International Day of Peace. So these declaration of international days reflect the UN General Assembly's capacity to draw attention towards the important global themes. These are some important functions performed by the UN General Assembly. These powers and functions reflect the central role of the UN General Assembly in shaping the collective responses of the international community to global challenges and promoting cooperation among member states. So, dear students, in today's lesson, we have discussed the structure of UN General Assembly and various powers and functions of the UN General Assembly. Even in our next lesson, we are going to learn about the role of the UN General Assembly. Thank you.